Topo Athletic is committed to lifelong health and better movement. Topo builds running shoes for those who get out there every day regardless of weather, speed, energy, or mood. Their distinctive fit and feel combines instinctive human movement with modern performance and lightweight comfort to help you keep going, keep trying, and keep moving. Discover the Topo difference and step into a run experience unlike any other.
Hey everybody, welcome to the 134th episode of the Fireside Chat. Jason is saying hi because we're back again really soon after yesterday's Fireside Chat special episode with Cassandra Burke, and I guess I'm back pretty soon too. I just had a What's in Your Earbud show yesterday with Joe Harden, who is our amazing host from Beyond the Finish Line. Before we get started, if you're looking for more amazing shows like this, be sure to look up the Everyday Athlete Podcast Network everywhere you find your podcast. That's Apple, Spotify, YouTube. We have more fireside chat shows like this, Fiery Embers. We have Running Tales with Craig Lewis. We have a Beyond the Finish Line episode coming out this Thursday. And we have a What's in Your Earbuds episode coming out this Friday from yesterday's live show. So be sure to look up. There's something for everybody. Be sure to look up our shows. And thank you so much for joining us. And we have an amazing, exciting guest for you today, who I'm about to really air up with a really hype up intro. So with over a decade of research and clinical experience, Dr. Ayala is a licensed psychologist and certified mental performance consultant based in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Dr. Ayala is a published author of over 20 research articles and book chapters, has written 4 articles for us on Run, Try, Bike, by the way, and has been featured in Trail Runner Magazine, the New York Times, and other media outlets, including Run, Try, Bike, the voice of the everyday athlete. Shameless plugging. She is an accomplished cyclist, having landed on national podiums in road racing, fat bike racing, virtual racing, and gravel racing over the past several years, and is the proud owner of Scotty Sports Psychology. Without further ado, I am excited to bring Dr. Erin Ayala on the show. Hey, Dr. Erin.
Hello. How's it going?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. It's fall is like on the horizon finally. We've had some really nice weather. It's my favorite time of year in Minnesota. So I got a really good run in on Sunday. The leaves were popping. It was great.
What do fall temps in Minnesota mean?
It's relative. So I would say like 60s probably. That's kind of the sweet spot. We were, I think, a high of 70 something today.
Gotcha.
But then it's the shoulder season where it like turns really quickly. So next week it's going to be freezing like overnights. So
we're 2.5 minutes into this show and I've already learned something new. Shoulder season.
Shoulder season. That's what, yeah, I call it like, and that's where like we bring out all the layers because the temp could swing from like 42 to like 72 in the span of like one ride or run. So.
Oh, yep. Man. Shoulder season. Okay, I'll have to keep that in mind.
Yeah, shoulder season. Yep. Fall and spring. That's what it is usually.
So to not put a pun on what we were already talking about, we have an icebreaker question for you.
Yeah. Yes. Ready for it.
Actually, I am going to put a pun on that. We are punny people, but you may have heard this one before, but we have to ask it to everybody who's been on the show. Are you ready for this question?
Yes, I think so. I hope so.
That's the perfect answer. So without further ado, pineapple on pizza, yay or nay?
Ooh, this is a debate.
No, it's not. There's only one right answer.
I always, honestly, I use this example all the time in my work with athletes. I'll explain why after I answer it. So this is like a weird Minnesota, like indirect response. I can honestly go either way. Like I'll take it, but it's got to come with like red pepper flakes and Canadian bacon.
Aha.
Like it's gotta come with the other good flavors. Like I'm a spicy, so like bring the pineapple if you want to get this sweet spicy combo, but the like hot spice better be there for me.
I can accept that answer. I'm a big pineapple and jalapeno fan.
Yes.
Jason has something to say about additional toppings with pineapple.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I think the ratio right now is 99 out of 100 people will say, I do like pineapple on pizza, so long as it also has X, Y, and Z.
Interesting.
Which tells me you don't actually like pineapple on pizza.
Fair.
You really want to have all these other things on there.
Right. Fair.
I half like it.
Right. Yeah. It's not my first choice.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Somehow that hurts more than just a straight no.
Yes.
If it was on a Cheesecake Factory menu for pizza, I'd be on like page 12 before I decided I would eat pineapple on
Totally. Yeah.
Dude, Jason and I totally went to like this Italian place in Moab that had like this really good pizza, and they just stared right through me when I asked for like ranch dressing, and like Jason was just kind of daring me to ask for pineapple on my pizza. But after the
Oh,
ranch
that's funny.
dressing at an Italian place, I was like, man.
Yes.
The waitress was essentially like, "No, we don't do that here.
I'm sure.
If you want that, go down the street.
This
We're
is
not
not the
doing that
way.
here." So, what's the connection that you said you would answer afterwards to the athletes? Like, so how does that connect?
So I do a lot of work. So as a sports psychologist, I do a lot of work with athletes on kind of finding their why and keeping motivation like relatively high. It's always going to ebb and flow, right? But so when athletes start to kind of lose their way or lose their grounding or their footing in one way or another, kind of starting asking questions about like what races to do or why they're doing this in the first place, I bring in a lot of values work. And so it's basically it's one thing to set a goal and saying, okay, I want to complete this ultra, but goals are so arbitrary, and once that you check the box, then they're done. And so as endurance athletes, we can get stuck on this, like you call it the hedonic treadmill, where we're like searching for our next race and our next high, our next accomplishment, but we forget like, how are you showing up? What are you doing? And so the values, I always say, like, fast forward to the end of your career or just the end of the season, how do you want teammates, friends, your coach, competitors to describe you? And so those are your value system, and that can basically serve as your moral compass. So the example I always use is values are like pineapple on pizza. Everyone has a different opinion. There's no right or wrong answer unless you're Jason and you think there is. so then I say, or like your favorite kind of ice cream. Like we naturally have these preferences. And so then, can you change them? You can try, but we're just, predispositioned to lean towards certain things. And so it's really important for athletes to find that to keep their grounding. And like when navigating difficult decisions, they can use that as their compass, essentially. So
I want to follow up that answer with a question about continuing to do the same thing from a preference standpoint. So oftentimes I see athletes develop their identity around a specific distance or a specific race.
Yeah.
In other words, I'm the Ironman guy, right?
Yep.
I only do Ironman. And then something happens, whatever it is, right? Maybe they DNF, or maybe they can't get the training in and they now need to go race an Olympic distance triathlon, and it's hard for them. When you're working with athletes, is that something that you see? And if so, how do you help them navigate that idea that I'm the ex-athlete versus I'm an athlete in general?
Yep. It's so hard. And I see it happening after like a significant injury, with recovery or rehab takes a lot longer than expected. And then they start asking questions of like, okay, when I first got injured, I assumed that I would just get back to how I've always done things. And then they realize for one reason or another that that's not the goal anymore. Sometimes because they can't, like physically, it's not, their body's not going to allow them to do that. But the other time I see it a lot is during these big kind of life stage changes, like having kids, like new career, other like just big life shifts, a big move where the like environment shifts and it's harder for them to show up and train to the same extent that they always have. And then they start to ask questions like, well, am I still an athlete if I'm not doing Ironman distance, or if I'm not going all the way and like racing in the pro elite anymore? Because they feel like they're shortchanging themselves because they're comparing themselves to this like previous chapter, which that chapter might not make sense for them anymore. And so that's the work that we do. And basically like, okay, what's really important to you? Like as a pretty common example, it'll be working with parents. So they may be in their like 30s or 40s, 50s, where depending on where the kids are, like it just creates strain and stress to train for an Ironman. It takes up a lot of time, especially if the partner is not an endurance athlete, there can create this like big difference in terms of household labor. And then, you finish your century ride or your brick, and then you say you're going to be productive the rest of the day, mow the lawn, to do chores, but we all know the space cadet that we turn into after the long runs and rides.
That ain't happening.
Right. And so it's just like, it creates more stress in the household. So then the conversation is like, okay, well, who do you want to be as a parent? As an athlete, like, what is the middle path? And often it's cutting down on distances and being like, okay, I'm going to do 50 milers instead of 100 milers this next year. Like, that's just the new guardrail for me, and helping people create those guardrails in a way that still feels meaningful. And then going back to that value system, I'm like, you can still do all of those things that are important to you in a different distance. And here are ways that you can learn and like progress differently, because racing and pacing in Olympic is going to be different than a full Ironman. So you better, like, the hurt is going to be different. Prepare for it, right? So
yeah, I find that really fascinating. Also, the idea of like rails and like doing the things that you love with like different distances. Because one of the things that I struggle with after my first Moab DNF 2 years ago was kind of like letting this whole identity encompass me. Like Jason was saying, being the Ironman guy, I was the ultra runner, and that's all I felt that I was. That's where my value was from.
Yep.
And, realizing that us as human beings, like, we are so multifaceted, we have other roles in our lives. Like, I am also a business partner to Jason. I'm also a sibling to my sister. I'm also a son, and I'm also like so many other things, a partner. And so I have to imagine like a lot of the dynamic has to be trying to like not let that athlete identity just be the one thing, and like finding a balance in that dynamic of like all the multi-facets that you have.
Yes. Yeah. And being able to like still recognizing like balance is going to look different at different points of the season, and being okay with that, but being proactive and intentional, and being like, okay, I know I can't go really hard with like work and entrepreneurship at the peak of my like build before like Mid-South double. Okay, I know February, like, I'm going to have to like create some guardrails for myself professionally so I don't burn myself out or get injured, right? And then the flip side being like, okay, November, December is going to be a quieter season for me professionally. So then I can really lean into other areas of life, like catching up with friends who I haven't seen in a long time, spending more nights in with my partner and just hanging out and vegging on the couch. Like, what are those other things that I haven't made room for because of other priorities? And then it just like the pendulum swings the other way. And that's okay as long as you're proactive.
Well, how do you work with athletes that way? Because we are myopic, right? We see the finish line. I know that I have a race on April 12th, and that's all there is to it. And I've built out my training plan to go backwards, including taper and everything else.
Yes.
This idea that I'm now going to think about, well, busy season for work is here and busy season for my kids is here. Like, that doesn't happen for the vast majority of us. How can we make that so that it is something that we can focus on and think about and be proactive instead of reactive and creating stress and anxiety in the household?
Right. That's the like, so what I basically do is I work with all my athletes and saying one of the first kind of lessons that I teach is just as human beings, we like to avoid difficult thoughts and feelings. It's our MO. It's just how we're wired.
If I could 100 miles, then I would do that before having the difficult thoughts and feelings.
Exactly. And like endurance athletes, especially, we're a very interesting cast of characters because we sign up for this physical pain, but we are really good at avoiding the emotional stuff in general. Like, it's a coping mechanism. And so what can happen is we set the goal for the race, we work backwards, we've got the training plan, and we go for all of the green and training peaks or final surge and check the boxes. But then what are the other things that we're unintentionally neglecting behind the scenes? So what I do is I have these conversations, and like one of the analogies I often use with athletes comes from like baseball and softball. So if you visualize kind of an overhead shot of a baseball field, and then you imagine someone hits a fly ball all the way to the back of the outfield. The outfielder is running backwards, focusing on the ball. How do they know when they're going to hit the wall behind them? Any idea?
Well, I mean, as a baseball player, you have a sense of where that wall is based on the fact that you've done this numerous times.
Yep.
So you have an idea that the wall is, for example, 385 feet away from home plate. You also know that when you're standing in the outfield that you might be 285 feet away from home plate. And as you
Yep.
drift backwards, when I run at this speed, it's going to take me 5 seconds to get to the wall.
Yeah.
And then you're running, but then you're looking back, every now and again to just make sure you know where you are at on the ball field.
Right. Yeah. So a lot of it is intuition. So another thing that's there that often we don't pay attention to is if you think about like that overhead shot, there's a warning track where the terrain changes, right? Like the purpose of the warning track is to warn athletes that they're about to hit the wall or the fence behind them. But how often do they actually pay attention to that? And like the goal is to like pay attention to that change in terrain underneath your feet. So, but often we're so focused on the ball that we just ignore it altogether. And yeah, there's like peripheral vision, kind of like looking back, like, how am I doing? So as athletes, we have to do the same thing with like life training and figuring out what does your warning track look like and feel like. And then being proactive, because otherwise it just fosters like resentment and frustration in the household, difficult conversations, tension right during your big build. And then you grow frustrated because like they don't understand, da, 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 da. So the warning track usually is like changes in sleep, changes in eating. We get more irritable. The example I always use is like I get frustrated because I feel like my partner is chewing carrots or chips too loudly. Like that's one of my telltale signs of my personal warning track. Double booking appointments is another one because usually I'm so type A. And so if I like double book something or forget a meeting, that's a sign for me. And so it's like, okay, I know these are my telltale signs. So then when I'm dialed and like things are going well and I'm in working order, what does that look like? And then the kind of key question that I ask is, what feelings do you have to make room for in order to let that happen more often? So for me, it's usually like worries of like not being good enough or like dropping the ball or not being productive enough, or like that's what kind of feeds me to continue to go. For a lot of endurance athletes where like the exercise is kind of this compulsive thing. It's like, I don't want to fall behind on training. Like, what if I have to miss a workout later this week? So, okay, you have to make room for that anxiety that you're going to sit with and those worries in order to show up proactively as the athlete you want to be. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I know I'll turn this over to Jason afterwards, but I do want to quickly say, like, one of the things that Jason and I always actively talk about is imposter syndrome and how we both have it. Not just in endurance sports, but in being small business owners. Like,
yes.
And one of the things that you mentioned about, like, I think we had a conversation about this, but like sometimes like doing the training or going what we think is the extra mile in training with pushing yourself past the signs of that warning track because you feel like because you don't feel like you're good enough, or that'll give you more value, or
like,
that
you'll be ready,
or that you have to work or that you have to work harder to catch up, quote unquote. And so I think like imposter syndrome is a big thing. And I have to ask you, like, is that something that you deal with?
Totally. Yeah. I like as an athlete, I deal with it. And then also like as a sports psychologist, because of like just the comparison factor. So it's like, especially when I'm working with athletes who are like faster than me or better or more skilled, there's this part of me inside of being like, who am I to be working with this athlete who's competing at a higher level? So there's like the imposter syndrome of like, okay, I need to continue to show up and compete professionally and like get podiums or do these epic races in order to have this like street cred, right? But then professionally, I feel the same thing because I've never run a business before. I'm, 18 months in, I'm still figuring it out. And so then I'm always worried about like, what am I missing that I should know? And that's a very real, or like, who am I to put my name in the hat for speaking at this conference or doing these things? Or why should I like reach out to this podcast and try to get in with them? Right. So that's hard.
It's a razor's edge though, because if you don't reach out and ask to be on the podcast, or you don't do the thing that's going to move your business forward, it will never move forward, right?
Right.
And so, like, how do we as athletes, as entrepreneurs, walk that tightrope
Yep.
of is it just a matter of, and I'm going to simplify this beyond all belief, just doing the thing. So, and I'll give you the example.
Mm-hmm.
I in the green room, I mentioned that the depression that I had gone through for the last couple of weeks, and
Yep.
I talked to Ohm about it. I talked to Lori about it, and then I said to Lori, I said I want to put this out publicly,
Yeah.
because it'll help get it off my chest
Yep.
a little bit more.
Yeah.
And so I literally did that. I literally posted a couple of days ago, I think it was Sunday, about the depression, or maybe it was Saturday. And then I posted again yesterday, that I had bought a book called Unfuck Your Brain,
Nice.
and want to dive into that. And it was it was a way for me to like share the struggles that I'm having mentally with
Yep.
being a business owner and being an athlete. And it has felt so relieving,
I bet.
right? But what happened if it was the opposite? Like, how do you deal with the idea? Like, if you do just do it and then it doesn't give you that relief, like, what are the next,
Yeah.
like, how do you work through all of this stuff? Is it a matter of just keep talking?
It's often like playing the long game. And like, I think and there's a fine line too, because like mental health, at some point, it makes sense to bring in like medication and other supports. When it comes to like confidence, we know actions come before feelings in general, right? Again, mental health concerns, that's a little bit different because we're looking at like neurotransmitters in the brain. And so it's like for confidence, I say to my athletes, if you were like the most confident version of yourself, what would you be doing? If I was a drone following you around for the day or on the course, what would I see? And that's where we start.
Interesting.
And so, because that's where we know is like, we have to show up more confidently if we want to feel confident. Because if you think about it, feelings are all over the place and are horribly unpredictable. And so why would we base our behaviors and our habits off of such a chaotic variable? You know what I mean? Like, why are we waiting to feel motivated or disciplined or like joy or confidence or all of these? Why are we waiting for anxiety to go away in order to do these certain things? Like, we're letting the emotions take the driver's seat. As a psychologist, I'm all about emotions. They're really important. They give us a lot of really great information, but we don't have to let them take the driver's seat. So I was like, you can bring it along with you for the ride, as opposed to trying to like avoid the difficult thoughts and feelings and like bury them, deny them, just like think positive. So I'm very much a realist in being like, it's going to suck. You're not going to want to do it, and do it for 30 minutes. You don't have to do an 8-mile run. Like, just go out for 30 minutes, or 20, like do what you can do. And then from the like depression and mental health standpoint, that's where I say like, okay, what are the levers that you can pull right now? And it's like sleep consistency and sleep hygiene. Like, are you eating 3 meals a day and 2 snacks? Are you drinking your water? Are you trying to stay off of social media? Right? Like, what are the things that you can do? And then if you still continue to have those symptoms, it's like bringing in another layer of like, do we want to do therapy? Do we want to do meds? Do we want to do both? Because we know the research shows like therapy and meds are the best combo for depression in general. Exercise also really important, right? Like, there's other things in there, but it's starting with like, what are the low-hanging fruit?
It's interesting. Like, as an entrepreneur for years now, every morning I would read 3, 4, 5 newsletters about business, about everything, right? As a way to be better at running this company.
Yep.
And when I went through and dealing with, I should say, not went through, because it's always a process of the depression of, am I a good enough business owner to make this company successful?
Yeah.
I stopped reading those newsletters.
Yeah.
I just cold turkey stopped. They're there. And if, I want to read them at 3:00 in the afternoon, so be it. If not, delete and move on. Right.
Yeah.
And it has really helped to ease the burden of, am I good enough at being a business owner? Because I was comparing myself. And again, this is what's crazy. Comparing myself to like Amazon and Nike and McDonald's. And it's like, why are you comparing yourself to these companies, A, that have been around for ages,
Mm-hmm.
B, have endless budgets, C,
Mm-hmm.
have endless teams of people?
Mm-hmm.
Again, the two people plus Lori, the two people on the screen plus Lori are what this company is,
Yeah.
right? Like there's only
Right.
but so much you can do
Right. Yes.
before you need to do things. And we are working on outsourcing a lot of things, which is great. But yeah, you start to realize like this comparison to these companies is
Mm-hmm.
pointless. And
Mm-hmm.
just I cut out those newsletters and reading them in the morning first thing, and I'll read them at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and
Yeah.
they don't have
Yep.
the power over me anymore.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's similar to like racing. Your self-worth isn't defined by your
Mhm.
race results, right? The success of the business isn't going to determine your worthiness as a person. But when it's our like personal identity and it's super meaningful for us, it's really hard to separate those things. And then the comparison game, I mean, if you think about it, I went down a rabbit hole one day to figure out, I'm like, there has to be a function for comparison. Like, why do we do this? And if you look at like the social psychology literature, they'll say it's a really effective way to get feedback on how you're doing just as a human. And so we socially compare ourselves to people around us, people in similar situations, but then we oversimplify that process because everyone's stressors and life circumstances are different. But sometimes we get so like we forget to look at our own progress because we're so busy just focusing on, the volume that everyone else is doing in Strava, right? So it's
Yeah.
tricky.
Yeah, I mean, it's Jason and I have to have like we talk every week about the business, and sometimes one or the other, either me or him, has to remind the other person of how far we've come
Yes.
as business, as individuals, because we have this myopic vision. And I think, and I want to pose this question to you, but like, I made a post about this as well with my DNF for Moab, like
Yep.
this this fixation on like some zero, like I either did it or I didn't.
Right.
I either got on this podium or I didn't. I either finished this or I didn't.
Right.
Like I've either hit this mark or I didn't. Or similar to what you were talking about, like I either did the 8 mile run or I didn't. This all or
Right.
nothing mindset.
Mhm.
And I feel like what are your thoughts on like the sum zero mindset versus like the taking versus like the low hanging fruit, the all or something mindset? And
Yeah.
do you feel like that's been exasperated by this like overwhelming information that we get from social media?
Yes. Yeah. Because people don't post very often about their quote unquote failures or the disappointments or the underwhelming moments, right? It's like, and when we look at just the daily grind of mental health and being a really good athlete, it's like meditation. Like people aren't posting themselves meditate. That would be horribly boring for our feeds if we did, right? So like it's like eating nutrient dense meals, taking full rest and recovery days. It's like the boring stuff. And so we just don't post about those things when really that's the basics. Like that's what makes a really good athlete. It's not just the physical training. But then the all or nothing mindset, it drives me wild. And I'm like, well, what's the middle path? What are the other options? And what I say to a lot of athletes, especially like teens who might have more of that black and white thinking and being like, oh, my race was a total failure because I didn't get the time that I wanted, right? Being like, okay, let's think about this. Let's say that you want to run a sub 25K. Awesome. Like good on you. You could do this in a couple of different ways. What would it be like for you to be like super mean to your parents that morning because you're crabby and your breakfast wasn't ready on time? And then you're, like, you're being rude to the volunteers. You're cutting people off on the course. You're racing really aggressively. You're not following any sort of nutrition plan. Like, would you be proud of that if you still got sub 20? Like, probably not. And so then let's think about it. Let's say you get 21 or 22, but you have a really great morning. You execute your pre-race routine just like you planned and just like you wanted. You thank all of the volunteers along the course. You high five or fist bump a teammate, and you don't get that goal. Like that's something to still be proud of because of how you showed up. And so like that's that example of like all or nothing versus all or something is like you can still get a lot out of a race day experience even if you don't hit your goals because you showed up as just a person that you want to be proud of. Like that's where we start. And the ironic part is when we start to set goals that are more about the process and not the outcome, we tend to do better. And so performance also improves as a result, because then you're focusing on like the miles and kind of like, okay, what's my game plan? Like 80 grams of carbs per hour. Like, let's go. Then that's what you're focusing on, right? Or it's like, okay, at this aid station and these drop bags, I'm going to make this switch. Like, that's my next milestone, as opposed to I need to finish this like 200 plus miles, right?
How do we change the narrative to having more fun? How do we change the conversation to having more fun? Because as you're talking about the boring things,
Yeah.
like, yeah, eating a nutrient dense meal, that is boring, right? But we can make that fun. Like, here's me eating a burrito and it explodes all over me and whatever,
Totally.
right?
Yeah.
Or I was at yoga and I was in the middle of this, flamingo stretch, and I fell over and I knocked two of my other
Right.
students in the class. Like, we need to make it fun so that people do talk about the boring stuff
I
more
agree.
often than not, right? Because I think one of the things that we run up against, and we just started a TikTok account about a month or so ago, and I scroll on TikTok, and it is this mentality, it feels like, from what I'm seeing. Go hard at all costs. Go hard no matter what. Always be showing up. Never miss a Monday. And all of this, pardon my French, but it's all bullshit. I've missed a lot of Mondays. I've been doing this stuff for 17 years. There's been a lot of Mondays I've missed, and I'm still here and I'm still doing this stuff. So how do we change the conversation so that people recognize that the boring is fun, that taking a rest or a nap is important and it's also fun? Like, how do we change that narrative? Is it literally just, again, continuing to just talk about it?
I think so. And then I think it's also understanding like the reality that any of the like influencers on social media with like quick fixes or hacks it's going to be BS. Like, there aren't any quick fixes. And that's the boring part of it. It's like,
so you're telling me that if I eat 7 grains of rice with 3 squirts of lemon juice, I will not become a 2-hour marathoner?
Right. Yes. Right. And just like, and also, I mean, it's different, I guess, with like Mamba mentality, for example, and just like this, like rise and grind, get in for my 3 a.m. workouts. I'm like, at what cost? Like, is that worth it for the everyday athlete? Like, not in my book. For some, sure, maybe. But just like, or like the David Goggins mentality, like I know that he gets a lot of people really excited because of the intensity and the motivation and the adversity and the hardship and resilience. And like, is that sustainable for most human beings?
It's not sustainable for him.
True.
Let's be honest.
Yes. Yeah. So I think that's where we have to be more honest and open and authentic about our experiences on and off of social media. But then also just talking about the boring things that we're doing. Like bragging about getting 8 or more hours of sleep instead of like, oh, I'm running on 4 hours. Like I'm running on fumes today. Like, no. But then also when we get those types of comments, like being willing, depending on the relationship with the person and how much energy you have in the tank that day, being willing to address those comments and being like, is that what you're going for? Like, is that something that you're proud of? And then being willing to challenge it and being like, I've started like really prioritizing sleep and it's been a game changer. I get so much more done despite like in a shorter amount of time because I'm well rested. Right.
Yeah. We have a t-shirt that says, you keep grinding, I'm going to nap. Like,
exactly.
We're trying to, advocate to go take a rest. It's okay.
Yes.
One of the friends of Run Try Bike, Santino Williams, posted today, and this is a good question for you too. He's like, I just ran a half marathon. My plan says I should be recovering, but I feel good. And I want to go run today as opposed to resting today and then doing my short run tomorrow that I'm supposed to. And I was like, dude, I would vote for rest, because you go out and run today, you're going to then get tomorrow's schedule and you're going to be like, I don't feel like running because I ran yesterday. And then you're mentally going to be like, oh, I'm missing out on the thing that's on my training plan that I'm supposed to do because you skipped out on the rest for today.
I agree.
And he said, you're absolutely right. And I joked around with it. I'm like, my name is Jason Bahamundi and I support this message.
Yes. Yeah. But like, I think it's super important what you're saying. It's just like, stick to the plan unless there's a really compelling reason not to. And then listen to your body and like how it's responding to training, but it's like because a lot of athletes, I think, will make the mistake of being like toward the end of the season or at this place. It would be like for Ohm, for example, coming off of a killer season and being like, you know what, I'm just going to take this fitness as far as I can. Like, I'm in really good shape. I'm just going to ride it out and keep going. And then what's going to happen? He's going to get sick or injured and or plateau at the beginning of next season. And like, that's no endurance athlete wants to sign up for being flat all season long because they tried to take advantage of their fitness. Like, no, we get stronger when we're resting. That's the adaptation response. But that's a lot of the like education that I provide my athletes as well, is being like, getting in one more workout, you're probably just hurting yourself in a lot of ways. So yeah, lots of feelings about that.
Same here. Again, I've been doing this stuff for 17 years.
Yeah.
I've had burnout from Ironman. I've had burnout from racing Cocodona the inaugural year. But the one thing I have never been is injured. In 17 years of participating, I've never been injured. And a large part of that is because I've taken the time off
Yes.
after big blocks of training or after the big race. And I don't know, if somebody goes to my Ultra sign up or on my Athlinks account, if they would be like, well, look here, dude, you didn't race this time, right? Like nobody's doing that.
No.
So take the time off, get healthy, get ready, find that next passion for the next event, whatever that next event might be, right?
Right. Yep. Yeah. But that's where, like, as endurance athletes, I am like, that's where you have to be intentional about making room for the difficult thoughts and feelings that are going to show up when you're resting. So like, what's going on there that gives you that urge to get out for an easy run or ride just to spin out your legs? Like, is that really necessary? And it's usually coming from this, like, some sort of like anxiety or insecurities, fear of failure, right? And so are you willing to make room for those things in order to follow the plan, in order to really lean into rest? And I think you have to be intentional. Otherwise, like, you don't realize that you're engaging in those behaviors.
It's incredible. Like, as we sit here talking about like the, recovery and resting, I've found that in my short time as an athlete, I've found that sometimes taking the rest day is harder than going out and like doing the easy run just for the sake of doing the run. And I've had to learn and grow and become intentional about every single mile and every single training cycle that I'm doing, all the accessory work that I'm doing over time. And even, I got to be honest, even as I sit here now, like going into my second week without running after Moab, I've had thoughts of like, I should go out on a 30-minute run today.
Right.
And then as we were having this conversation, I'm like, why? Because I'm anxious,
Right.
I haven't ran in like a week. I'm losing fitness, like I'm freaking out. But when
it's
in
that athletic identity piece, right? Like, like there's so much wrapped up into that.
Is it identity as much as it is, I need to get the kudos on Strava, or I need to get the thumbs up on Instagram or my TikTok video, like, or is it like a all rolled into one scenario?
Yeah, I think the latter reinforces the former. So like every time we get those likes, those comments, that engagement, it's reinforcing our athletic identity because we're posting about something related to being an athlete. And so it like creates this like cycle where we're like, okay, I need to get more hits, more likes, whatever it might be, more content in this area. Cause then that reinforces like, yep, I'm doing it right. I'm good enough. I'm fast enough. I'm strong enough, right? I'm on the right track.
It's crazy to me because we also then can't figure out how to get out of the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
And I'll give you this example. I haven't had a Strava account in about 4 or 5 years. But when I was on Strava, there was somebody I was connected to who, without fail, 3-4 times a week, the title was Easy Run. And you click on it and you open it up and it's zone 4 and 5. And you're like, there was nothing easy about this other than you pressing start and stop on your watch.
Yeah.
Everything else about this was hard.
Yeah.
And you could see the throughout the training cycle, right? The pace is getting slower. And then the I didn't meet my goal at my A race. But that need to prove to somebody, whomever that somebody is, that your easy pace is a hard pace. It's an effort. It's strange, isn't it? Like, like who are we proving this to?
Right. Yeah. No one. Ourselves. I mean, I guess that's the deeper answer, trying to like prove it to ourselves.
Yeah, but we know we're lying.
Yeah, totally. Yes. Mhm.
Like we know that when I was running at my easy pace, I was huffing, I was puffing,
I
my
was
muscles were
struggling.
burning, and yet I go into Strava and I type in easy pace. Like
Yeah.
we know we're lying to ourselves.
Yes.
And so we're really looking for validation from Suzanne in Sarasota, Florida. And I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Suzanne in Sarasota, Florida, that I used your name as an example, but like that's what we're looking for, right?
Mhm.
Some stranger on the internet
Mhm.
to be like, kudos.
Yep. Like validation from other people. Like, okay, good. I'm fast. I'm strong. I'm doing it the right way. I'm getting lots of volume in. Like people respect me, right? But that's what it's like, go down that rabbit hole and see what's at the end of it. Like, what are you actually looking for? And then can you provide that yourself? And are you ever going to actually get that thing that you're looking for? Often, like I would say no. Like we can't be, we can't just be like waiting for feedback from other people and external validation that we like deserve to be athletes or we deserve to be here, right? Because like, if we're looking for evidence, like whatever we're looking for, we're going to find it. The kid's got to come from inside. Otherwise, it's just not sustainable. Not at all.
It would be amazing if social media was a lot more honest, right? So you post easy run, easy run, easy run, and then you go for your goal race and you fail miserably, or
Yeah.
you DNF.
Yeah.
And inevitably when you post your DNF, people are going to say, "Oh, sorry about that. Get them next time." What if somebody was like, "Look, dude, the fact that you DNF'd is no surprise. All of your easy runs were in zone 4 or 5. It's not a shock."
Yeah. Yeah. Or I was going to say, like, when, you have the DNF being like, yo, like that sucks. And also mental toughness also comes from making the call. Like, I think I said this to is like, sometimes being mentally tough is being like, is calling it.
Yes.
And being like, you know what, I'm done. Like that is the harder decision, to know that you are the one making the decision to end this race that you've been working so hard for. Like that is tough to do.
Oh, one of the hardest things I've ever done in my career. Maybe harder than pressing forward, honestly.
I believe it. Mm-hmm.
And I'm glad that he did it, because I've told him this too. Like, as we were traveling that 8.5 hours, as we got towards the end of that segment, I kept thinking into my head, how am I going to tell him that he's not going any further?
That he's done.
Yeah, because he looks like shit. Like everything about this looks terrible.
Yeah.
And we're going to do what? We're going to stretch this out to do another segment so that he DNFs at the next segment and puts himself further into a hole and jeopardize his health.
Right.
And so when we did get to that aid station, he was very adamant that he wasn't moving on. He was like, this is the end of my day here, and I'm at peace with it. And but there is that mental component that like he had to come to peace with it, because otherwise he was going to have to come to peace with me telling him that he wasn't going any further.
Yes. Yeah. A hard job for crew, like for pacers, like that's a tough job. And you've got to know the athlete in order to be able to help with those decisions, and know how the athlete's going to respond when you try to enforce, being like, this is the plan. This is what we talked about, right? This is what we need to do. But like, I think of one of my athletes, we were unpacking one of his DNFs, and I'll never forget what he said, because I basically said, like, do you regret the decision to call it when you did? And he's like, nope, not at all. And I was like, for what reason? Like, help me understand. And he's like, how often as athletes, like it's easier for us to justify DNFing when there's some sort of injury or like physical thing that we're risking, like making substantially worse. Like if I've got really bad knee pain and I know that like I could be creating some really long-term consequences by continuing to dig, it's easier to make that decision because you've got those physical cues. And basically what he said, he's like, I feel like if I would have kept going, I would have been doing that, but it would have been mental, where I wouldn't have felt the same joy that I always feel with running. Like I would have just been taking the sport away from me. And like, I wasn't willing to let that happen, which was such a cool way to think about it. And for him to be able to be in that place during the race, in the middle of an ultra, to make that decision, like that's wisdom, like that's experience, so.
Yeah, I mean, it reaffirms my decision that I could not eat for like the next 24 hours after the race. And I joke, I've made a line out of this, but because you got to have fun with it. But I absolutely look like Skeletor from He-Man when I got back from that race.
I believe it. Yeah. Yeah.
Not for nothing, you look like Skeletor at the first aid station we met at.
Yeah, that was a hot day. It was
It was
The
a
long.
look
hot
is
day.
getting more intense. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a hot day,
My brain was melting. That was hot.
Yeah.
we persevered to get you to that next aid station with a lot of cajoling, with a lot of conversation, with a lot of tricks
Yep.
to get him to that next aid station. And I think the thing that he can walk away from, and I don't want to speak for you, so interrupt me, but I think the thing that he can walk away from this race with is with this story of I was able to pull myself from this race course rather than have somebody else pull me from this race course. So I was in control. Somebody else wasn't in control of my event.
Yeah.
And that is something you grow from.
Yeah. Like that's strength.
Mm-hmm.
Being able to do that.
I knew 10 out of 10 times that I would make that decision the same way every single time.
Yeah.
And that I would absolutely, no matter the outcome, I want to be in control of the process.
Yeah.
No matter what, like I want to be the one making the decision.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, so before we, on a higher note, before we jump into the rapid fire food section, I want to give you the chance to talk about where people can find you and Scotty Sports Psychology.
Yeah. Yeah. Instagram is probably the best place to find me. I like, despite being decent at email, I struggle with it. I think like a lot of people, right? It's like the better you are at email, the more emails you get. So I try not to reinforce that relationship. So Scotty, it's SKADI, sport psychology. Sport is singular. I don't know why sports psychologists, we just say sport singular instead of sports psychologist. I have yet to figure out the reason behind that. But so Instagram, and I post every day. I very rarely miss a day. When I do, I have to give myself grace. But you can find a lot of good like tips, content, and it's really catered toward endurance athletes. And so that's kind of the best place to hang. Website, I've got a lot of good like blog posts, free resources. There's a free athlete wellness and performance assessment on there that anyone can take and get feedback on. And it'll tell you, compared to other athletes, what percentile you're in based off of how you're responding. So we look at like resilient mindset, we look at physical health habits, we look at coach-athlete relationship, meaningful relationships, self-reflection, and like self-discovery. And that comes from my research on like what are the factors that really do contribute to optimal mental health and performance for athletes. And so I basically took all of that research, dropped it, and compiled it into a self-assessment, and then did the magic tech behind the scenes so that people get results right away. So that's fun because then you also get the percentile and it turns into a game and you're like, well, could I become the 70th percentile? What would that look like? So that's a fun one. Aside from that, we'll have some upcoming like events, and I'll talk more with Run Try Bike about it as we get closer. I've mentioned it to Ohm. We're going to do like a winter athlete summit. So I'm calling it the Scotty Athlete Summit, and that's going to be probably January 11th, 12th. And we're going to be bringing in some big hitters to talk about like really hot topics in the field of endurance, like why carbs are having a moment. Why are they important? Like, why should we care?
Taste good.
Yeah, right. They're delicious. We're going to have a sleep scientist come in and talk about why sleep is important for athletes and like what's actually happening behind the scenes when we're sleeping with recovery. So basically those deeper conversations, like we know sleep's important, we know carbs are good, but why? So that's going to be a really cool event. So you can stay updated. Social media, we'll post about it. We'll post about it on our website. And then for any parents or high schoolers who are listening, we're doing a coaching like recruitment panel on how to kind of prepare for collegiate participation or competition in Nordic skiing, which is a really nuanced sport in the endurance world, because there are only 24-ish teams in the US that you can kind of like compete with or for. So that's a really kind of niche one to understand. So we've got a coach coming in to talk about that process. We've got Chapman University from Southern Cal swim and dive coach is coming in to talk about their process. And then we've got a head cross-country track and field coach from Southern Illinois University. So that's going to be November 8th. So that's going to be a fun one because we're going to flip the tables and talk more about mindset being like, yeah, you can be fast, but like as coaches, what are you looking for when it comes to like psychological characteristics? Like, what does that look like, and how do you tap into that? So that's gonna be fun. So stay tuned for that as well.
That's fascinating. By the way, when you go to Dr. Erin Ayala's website, scattysportspsychology.com, do not forget to subscribe to her newsletter.
Yes.
It comes out monthly,
Thank
and
you.
it has a lot of great information in there for you. So make sure you subscribe to the newsletter as well.
Yeah, lots of hot topics with the blogs. All the podcasts that I go on, I post them in the newsletter. Lots of good free content there.
Yep.
Dr. Erin, thank you so much for coming on the show. But before we let you go, we are going to dive into a rapid fire food section. You can see Jason, he is getting revved up for this. It's going to be
ready.
No hard journalism, just awesome food questions.
I mean, we could talk all day about sports psychology, but I could also talk all day about food.
Food. Yes.
So Oreos, are you an old school Oreo fan, a double stuff fan, a thin fan, or a Cakester fan?
Ooh, interesting. I don't even know what Cakester is. What does that say about me?
It's a ding dong. Like they just repurposed the ding dong or the devil dog. Really, that's all they did.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say I'm classic, old school.
How do you eat it? Do you spin and scrape?
I do. I'm a spinner. Yep.
And do you eat the chocolate wafer side that's empty first, or do you scrape first?
Ooh, good question. I think, do I do half and half? Like, I'll usually have some. I won't scrape the whole thing. Like, I'll have some. Like, I'll just like I enjoy. What is it? Cream in the middle? I don't even know what it is. Yeah. Frosting.
Cream.
Yeah.
According to Nabisco, it's cream.
Right. It's yeah. Yeah. I can't. But now that I think about it, I can't remember the last time I had an Oreo.
Better get on that.
I do love Oreos.
Oreos versus Nutter Butter. Which one are you taking first?
Oreos.
Oreos versus Fig Newtons. Which are you going to first?
Oreos.
Oreos versus Chips Ahoy. Which are you going to first?
Ooh, that's harder. It's going to depend on the mood. I do love cookies. I have a sweet tooth, which is why it's so easy for me to say goodbye to Fig Newtons and Nutter Butters, being like, give me like the chocolate and the good stuff. So cookies are my weakness, but they're like the soft ones. So that's why with Chips Ahoy, I hesitate because they're a little too crunchy for my taste.
But they do have the soft batch Chips Ahoy.
Yes. If it was soft patch, no doubt.
Chips Ahoy. All right. So you can't pull apart a Chips Ahoy. Do you dunk it or do you just bite into it?
I just bite into it.
There you go.
Yes.
So chocolate chip cookie versus oatmeal raisin cookie. The winner is?
Ooh, chocolate chip.
Man.
With peanut butter.
What? What is this?
Peanut butter chocolate chip? So good.
Is it like a Reese's peanut butter cup with cookie dough?
Yes. Delicious.
I think we've just made an ice cream flavor, by the way.
Right?
Licorice, red or black?
Red, all the way.
All the way. Are you a fan of Peeps, or are they just terrible food covered in gold glitter dust?
Yeah, the latter.
Yeah, they're awful, right?
I have a hard time with those. Yeah.
Like if somebody brings that to your house, are you just like asking them to leave right away?
Yes. I'm also the one, this is like, I probably shouldn't admit this publicly. I'm also the one who like hides on Halloween and turns the lights out in my house and like watches TV in the basement. Like I'm not a big holiday person in general. So like Easter and Peeps, just not my vibe.
All right. So let's go back to Easter holiday candy though. So you have Peeps, you have the Reese's peanut butter cup that's in the egg form.
Yes.
And you have the Cadbury cream egg. Nah. Which one are you eating? Which one are you tossing? And which one are you giving to somebody else to eat?
I'm tossing the Peeps. The Cadbury. I'm not giving anyone anything. I'm keeping the Cadbury egg, and it's gonna sit in the back of my kitchen cabinet for 5 months, and then I'm gonna forget about it. But I'll eat the peanut butter right away.
Candy corn. Is candy corn a real candy, or is it just earwax covered in sugar?
Oh, that's hilarious. I like candy corn.
Why?
Like in moderation.
Like zero. I would moderate it right at 0.
Round down to 0.
I don't mind it.
So I've been told, or we've been told, that if you eat it with peanuts, it tastes like a payday bar. And my response to that is, why do I got to do all the work to get something to taste like a payday bar when I could just buy a payday bar?
Yeah. Fair. That's a fair question.
Yeah.
like, let's not, like, this is like the whole hack yourself to success, right? Hack your way to a payday bar or just buy one.
Yes. It's probably cheaper in the long run anyway.
Exactly.
Yes.
Do you remember the Orange Circus peanuts?
Yes.
Are you a fan of Orange Circus peanuts, or are they just Amazon stuffing styrofoam?
It's like styrofoam. It's like mushy. I don't like the texture. It's weird. And the flavor isn't even that good.
Which of grandma's candies are you choosing first? The butterscotch, the strawberry, or the mint?
Strawberry, for sure.
Really?
I like that it has the little like gooey, like there's a little surprise in there, like a jelly. Yeah, love that. These are good questions.
Yeah, we're gonna win a Pulitzer for our hard-hitting journalism on food.
Yes,
for sure.
Yeah.
Creamy or crunchy peanut butter? Which do you prefer?
Ooh, can I go off script?
Absolutely.
Okay, there is a small peanut butter company in Saratoga Springs, New York.
Go New York, go New York, go. It's
probably called Saratoga Springs. Yeah, don't get links in Liberty. I'm still grieving. So we did not.
I wrote that to you. I forgot that I wrote that you spelled
you spelled links wrong. I'm like, funny, hilarious. Yeah. So okay, going off script. There's a peanut butter company in Saratoga Springs, New York, and they have like these different flavors. And there's one flavor they have. It's called Adirondack Jack. And it's a mix of peanut butter and almond butter. And it's got a little bit of vanilla and cinnamon, chia seeds, and craisins. Whoa. And it is so good. So that became like my hiking sandwich peanut butter when I lived in upstate New York for grad school. And like, that's where also there's like, it's so many memories because that's also where I met my now husband. And like, we would go on hikes together and I'd make my peanut butter sandwiches with that peanut butter. And then one time when he really won me over, he made peanut butter cookies with that peanut butter. So yeah.
I mean, clearly that's a fan favorite in your household.
Yes.
But you said peanut butter sandwiches. So are you opposed to peanut butter and jelly sandwiches?
He loves them. I love peanut butter and banana with a little bit of honey.
So have you ever been tasked with making him a peanut butter and jelly sandwich?
Nope. He doesn't trust me. I would probably make it wrong. Yeah. He's very particular about his PB&J. Yeah.
People are really particular about how you make their PB&J sandwiches.
Yes.
Like for me, it's peanut butter on one side of the bread, jelly over top of that peanut butter, and then bring the other slab over and then cut it into 4 triangles. And then you eat it with the pinky up in the air because you're having like little tapas, right? Like that's how you're supposed to do it. Right? I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. I'm a peanut butter and banana gal.
Open-faced?
Nope.
You put another slice of bread on top.
Mm-hmm.
Are you adding honey to that banana, peanut butter banana? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then you got to have something to drink because all of that smushy stuff is just going to stick right to the top of your mouth.
Yes, it will. Yes. Yes. Either iced coffee or water.
There you go.
Yeah.
Is red velvet cake a real flavor or is it just chocolate cake dressed up to go to the prom?
Oh, that's funny. I think it's a real flavor because it's different than typical chocolate.
Yeah, we've heard that before, but you know, when it's mass produced, they're just charging you for the extra red food dye that doesn't go in the chocolate cake.
Extra, like red 40 and other chemicals and additives. They're like banned in Europe.
You go to that diner and it looks so good, but you realize the slice of cake is $8.99 and the chocolate cake is $4.99, and you're not getting anything different.
Yes. Yes. That'd be a good experiment, actually.
It would be. See, we need a control group. I'm happy to eat the chocolate cake in the control group.
Yeah. Yeah. Funny.
Favorite flavor of ice cream is?
The first thing that came to mind was chocolate chip cookie dough.
Nice.
Yeah. Classic.
Favorite.
I do like cookies and cream though too. That's another good one.
Cookies and cream is hard to beat. I'm a mint chocolate chip fan.
Yep.
Cannot go wrong with that.
Yep.
Oh, I don't know yours. What is yours?
My favorite ice cream?
Yeah.
Cookie dough.
Yes, we're on the same page.
Yeah, I love cookie dough.
Yeah.
With like caramel swirl through it or just straight cookie dough?
Straight cookie dough. Oh, and if I had to go with anything without like anything in the ice cream, I would say butter pecan.
Ooh.
I do not agree with. I'm not a big butter pecan person. I don't know why.
Favorite flavor of cake is?
Ooh. Oh man, some of these are hard questions. I'm gonna. You may not appreciate this. I'm gonna say red velvet.
That's recency bias. That's pure recency
It
bias.
totally is. Yeah.
I'll help
Yeah.
you out. Italian wedding cake, birthday
Okay.
cake, chocolate cake, lemon cake, carrot cake, and there's a lot of options right there.
My favorite kind of dessert is tiramisu. So if you could turn
Oh.
that into a cake, I'd be sold.
Tiramisu is a solid choice because you're getting
Uh-huh.
espresso in there. Oh, it's so good.
Yeah. A lot of different textures. I also actually, so here's my real answer, ice cream cake.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh, and you lived in upstate New York, so you remember Carvel, don't you?
Yes.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
You Fudgy the Whale could not be beat.
Right.
Hands
Like
down,
the
the
little, like
best.
fudgy layer and like the yes.
New Yorkers
do
know
it.
Fudgy the Whale, hands down, the best ice cream cake to ever be made. It was
So good.
so damn good. And now I need to go get some. I think they sell them in the grocery stores. Favorite pie?
Banana cream.
Oh, really fast on
Yeah.
that one. No hesitation.
So I grew up in like the restaurant business. My dad owned a Perkins restaurant.
Yes, I remember
And-
Perkins.
Yeah. So like I don't know why I just have like memories of their banana cream pie. So it's one of those like childhood memories where because he would always bring home pies for like Thanksgiving or the holidays from Perkins.
There you go.
Yeah. Their strawberry pie was also really good now that I think about it.
Favorite donut flavor?
Ooh. That's a tough one. I'm going to say like just like classic like plain like cake donut with
Yes.
like, chocolate icing and sprinkles on top.
Oh, I don't need all that stuff. Straight up plain old fashioned. Like I could
Okay.
dunk in the coffee if I want to. Like
Actually, I need to change my answer. Apple cider donuts. Apple cider donuts from upstate New York.
yes,
Yeah.
apple
Those
cider
are good.
donuts.
Like this time of year. Oh, they're so good, especially when they're fresh.
We lived in Seattle a year ago, and we went to the apple farm, and we bought a dozen donuts, and I had to literally control myself by putting them in the freezer so I
Yes.
wouldn't eat all 12 of them in one sitting. They were so
good.
damn good.
Yeah.
Can't be beat.
For any like Midwesterners, Door County, Wisconsin has really good cherry flavored donuts.
Ooh,
Like because they're known for their cherries up there.
Yeah.
So good. So for anyone who travels that way, that would be
We'll
worth checking out.
we'll stick with the apple cider. So are you going apple cider or pumpkin spice?
Pumpkin spice.
Oh yeah.
Mhm.
What do you? So you decide that you want to have a pizza for
Mhm.
dinner.
Yep.
What do you call the place that you go to?
Like here locally?
Yeah, not the name of it, but like not the specific name, but the general name.
Oh, good question. I don't know if I would I would call. I think I would just say let's go get pizza.
Yeah, you don't say I'm going to go to the pizza restaurant or anything like
Uh-huh.
that. Yeah, see, as a New Yorker, I'm going to the pizza joint. Like that's just
Okay.
the way it comes out. It's just natural,
Yep.
you know. And so I had this interview with John Gray of Pretty Neat Performance, and I asked him that same question, and he was like, "I'm not cool enough to use the words pizza joint." And like then we just started riffing, and I was like, "Look, as a 6-year-old, I was way ahead of my time. This idea that you'd have a joint with pizza."
Right.
You know, like the 12, the 13, 14, 15-year-old kids were like, what's that kid doing? Let's go hang out with him. He's going to the pizza joint. Like
Yes.
I was way ahead of the time.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah. Yep. I just say we're gonna get pizza. But I guess I don't get pizza that often. When I was in New York, I ate it a lot more often. Like
Do you call it
Minnesota.
a pie? Or it's
What's
just
that?
pizza? Do you call it, I'm going to go get a pie? Or I'm just going to go
Just
get
pizza.
pizza? Just straight pizza. It
Mhm.
must be a Northeastern thing or a New York thing to
Yeah.
call it pie. I'm going to
Just
go get
like
a pie.
pizza
at the
by the
pizza joint.
slice.
Yeah.
Mhm.
All right, last one for you. There's
Okay.
a tray of brownies on the counter. Are you going to the corner where you get a little bit of crust and a little bit of ooey gooey, or are you going straight to the middle with all ooey gooey?
Middle.
Are there nuts on the brownie?
Nope.
No nuts.
Yeah.
Whipped cream, ice cream topping?
I'll do ice cream, but not whipped cream.
What kind of ice cream flavor?
Vanilla bean.
Oh, yes.
Ooh.
Gotta have the specs
Mhm.
in there, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so good.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Erin Ayala, thank you so much for your insight into the mental side of endurance sports, and thank you for being a willing participant in the ridiculous random food questions we threw at you.
So good.
Scatty Did I pronounce it correctly? Scotty?
Scotty.
Scotty, sportspsychology.com. Also
Mhm.
under the same name on Instagram. Make sure you check out Dr. Erin and subscribe to her newsletter. She's got great information that comes at you on a regular basis. We'll
Yes.
see you again next week on the Run Try Bike Fireside Chat.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.